What do you believe right now that's making you feel this way? And when you analyse it, you realise how irrational you can be at times.
Every single one of our major customers and minor customers all shut their doors overnight.
It's not sales per se, but the outcome of it is, because people get to know you, they get to see you.
But, what's the culture like at the business? What do we stand for, the values?
I've got to tick that box on my personal development programme I don't really want to be here.
Scaling up a business isn't easy. If it were, we wouldn't have less than 4% of businesses scaling beyond 10 employees or around £1 million turnover level, and less than 1% beyond 50 employees. But the contribution that we make as owner-managers to our economies is immense and should never be underestimated, yet it can be a tough gig for all of us at times, and only other business owners truly understand the challenges that we face. And through ScaleUp Radio, we aim to help make things a little easier. We interview guests who have been where you are now and may have faced some of the challenges that you are facing. And they offer their thoughts and advice on what has worked for them, as well as what didn't. And we've also combined many of the lessons from these interviews, and also through working with hundreds of owner managers over the last 10 years or so, into a practical scale-up handbook that we've called the Entrepreneurial Scale-Up System, or ESUS. And it's for owner managers like you and me as we navigate our own scale-up journey. And you can order a copy through your favourite online book retailer, or by going to all the W's, esusgroup.co.uk, www.esusgroup.co.uk.
Hello, I'm Granger Forson, www.bizsmart-gloucestershire.co.uk, or find me on LinkedIn. This time on ScaleUp Radio, I speak with Adam Jacobs, the owner of Bloom Procurement Services. Bloom is an innovative business that links the business sector and its needs for services with the supply base, based on outputs, not on procurement contracts. They started just over 10 years ago and have 100 staff, and celebrated their 10-year anniversary in the Houses of Parliament. What's interesting in Adam's story is how his entrepreneurial leader is about ensuring the vision is great and that everyone always understands it. It's never a once and done thing. As always, we cover a lot of ground, including your business culture is never done. You must work at it constantly and develop it. You must build the plumbing first to make the value flow through your business, and then you can scale it. It is so important to build in the business the opportunity for networking that leads to collaboration, that then leads to innovation. And business success by small improvements every day by everyone is so important. What is wonderful about this conversation with Adam is how his passion for helping our public services achieve better outcomes at less cost through clever procurement drives everything in his business does. I know you'll get an awful lot from this episode, so let's go and hear from Adam. So, hello, Adam Jacobs. Welcome to ScaleUp Radio. Please introduce yourself and your business to us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. So my name is Adam Jacobs. My business is Bloom Procurement Services. Who are we? So we are the UK's only public sector marketplace offering an end-to-end managed service solution for professional services. So we take the pain out of both buying and selling professional services and opening up the market for all suppliers to participate. Probably sounds very dull, very boring, and potentially very technical, but actually it's pretty transformational. And I think it has the potential to be ubiquitous as Uber is, if you like, globally, because it is so transformational in terms of the secret sauce of the business. So the secret sauce of a business really is we've flipped what has traditionally been a very input-driven business, which is, well, we need consultants, so let's bring in these consultants. How much do they cost by the hour or by the day or by the week or the month, and for a certain purpose? Well, that's not relevant to us, and it's not relevant to organizations who bring in consultants. If you bring in and you need external expertise, you're looking for something to be delivered. So can you articulate that? Can you articulate the business problem? Can you articulate the outcome you're looking for? If you do that, that is transformational, because we effectively trade in outcomes. And On that basis, for the UK public sector, we see a 14% saving against the budget, against the taxpayers' pound, after all fees are paid to ourselves for running this kind of platform. And I could go in and talk to you in detail about how that is how that is possible, how we achieve that, but it really is a very different approach. So fundamentally, my entire philosophy, my entire DNA is outcomes-based thinking.
Okay. So in terms of, we're talking about the public sector. So what type of needs would they have, and why would they come to you, and then take us through how that would then result in an outcome for them?
Okay, very good question. Well, all organisations, not just the public sector, have needs for external professional services and skills, because every organisation can't simply retain on its own payroll all the latest skills you need in certain areas. So let's say, for example, cyber security. It's a very fast-moving market. It is clearly a threat to every organisation, public or private sector, and organisations need to have the best skills that they can bring in at the appropriate time. So that is one kind of example. Another example could be the implementation of a new financial management system, for example, for a public sector organisation.
Yeah,
it could be a master plan for the regeneration of a city, of the town centre. So really, we work across all parts of the public sector, and we have won via a kind of procurement competition a framework, what's called a framework agreement, and this, if you like, is like a yellow pages that can be accessed by any public sector organisation. So the public sector organisation is a primary school, a secondary school. It is also a housing association. It's local government, local authorities, and associated agencies. It's the NHS. It's what we call blue light, which is fire, police, ambulance service. It's central government, non-departmental government departments. So it is actually a plethora of organisations, and they all have the option, if you like, to tap into this approach, and they do, which is, that's quite astonishing. From across all parts of the public sector over the last 10 years, the name Bloom has begun to connote with, this solution helps us to get stuff done.
So in the past, you're talking about they would have to go out, tender, find the ideal person or organisation to come in and deliver that service or requirement they would do, and then they would then pay for that in terms of it. So what's the difference then with your with Bloom?
Buying professional services is actually a very difficult process. So Bloom actually came out of a boutique consultancy which I have built and which still runs, called V4 Services, and V4 Services specialises in what's called business transformation. So, and that was really the genesis of Bloom, and looking at both from the supplier side, selling into the public sector, selling into an organisation, but also having a view from the public sector side or any large organisation size. It's actually very difficult to articulate precisely what would you need people to actually do, and people tend to think in terms of inputs. Oh, right, I need this large organisation because they've got a big brand name, or we've been contacted by this local supplier and that we think they're going to be amazing. But actually, what happens is we end up buying inputs. We end up buying, and without a clear, necessarily, there may be a very clear brief, but the brief can very quickly get lost, and an original scope, if you like, of work can morph into something else. So I've always thought, well, actually, input-based activity, that kind of way of bringing in professional services, is actually quite a costly process, because it's traditionally has required putting together big tender documents and has normally limits the market opportunity, if you like, to a small number of kind of suppliers. So that's one issue. It is normally the briefs are very hard to write, and they can be very complex and very unwieldy. And in the public sector, the public procurement processes doesn't leave any opportunity for a conversation to say, well, hang on a second, that doesn't quite make sense. Why are you saying that? Timescales tend to run on, I've been in this market for 25 years. I have not been involved in one public sector tender that has gone to the time that's been set out in the tender process, not one. Now, so if you think about that in terms of the cost to suppliers and the opportunity cost, but also think about that in terms of, well, hang on a second, what this organisation needs to bring in some skills and expertise it doesn't have to deliver something. So to solve a problem, for example, which could be making our roads better, which could mean, making our streets safer, which could mean helping to avoid knife crime, whatever those things are, the money is being used, the taxpayers' money is being used to help to deliver something that is an outcome. So why don't we just focus on that outcome? And from the supplier side, well, suppliers may have the expertise and have the relationship, but they have got no clue in many cases as to what on earth is this bewildering process you're now inundating me with, and what are these forms I've got to fill in, and particularly if you're an SME. So by our role really is, my view is, if you can articulate the problem, and can I just give you a little sense of outcome-based thinking, how that might apply today, if I may.
Yeah.
So, and a little bit of a bugbear of mine, because every budget, a chancellor will stand up, and usually there's normally a very big campaign talking about potholes, because there's every year there's kind of potholes, and in the budget last week, £200 million for potholes was announced. Now, I'm looking at it and thinking, hang on a second. The organisations who are going to be fixing these potholes, the same organisations who we're asking to maintain the roads. But the problem is that the way that we are constructing these contracts with organisations is on a input or schedule of rates type of basis. Why don't we do something different? Why don't we say, guys, here's the roads network, here's all the data you need, and here's the standards that we are looking for. And we want the roads and the highways to be safer. We want there to be less slips and trips. We want there to be less accidents in extreme conditions. We want you to make sure the roads are safe, and etc. And so you pull together all those outcomes you're looking for, the problems, and you say, well, right, now give me a price to maintain the roads to a certain standard. You wouldn't have the £200 million that was announced in the budget. You wouldn't have it. I have many mantras. If you can embed outcome-based thinking in the DNA of an organisation, I think that is a 20 to 30% opportunity. A 20 to 30% opportunity for what? For reducing cost and for improving outcomes. And it sounds obvious when I hope it sounds obvious when I talk about it, but the market is configured completely differently. And just because the market is configured completely differently, as a stubborn bootstrapping entrepreneur that I am, I'm taking that on. And I believe this will become the default. Well, this will become ubiquitous. There's no question. And of course, it will take time. But if you keep this recording and you roll and you look back in 10, 15 years, I'm hoping you'll see that Bloom will be a global name and will be associated with outcomes, an outcomes based with outcomes and trading in outcomes in the way that Uber was, associated with the completely new form of mobility.
Yeah. Oh, that's really interesting in terms of turning it from I'll have a contract to repair roads, to actually having a road network that is fit for purpose in terms of doing that, and how you fund and pay for that.
Well, forgive me, Granger. Sorry, didn't mean to. If you think about so I've had the privilege of being both on the buy side and on the sell side, and that is an amazing place. And if you think about Bloom, we're kind of a connectivity platform, joining the dots, and connectivity is so important. So suppliers will say, well, we've got all this innovation, but they just won't listen to us, because what happens is we get this tender and it's 200 pages and we either bid for this thing or not. So actually, that is, if we've got this innovation in the market. So if we ask suppliers, and if we take this hypothesis I've just talked about to market, suppliers will come to the table and will say, yes, of course we will engage in this process. Of course we can now remodel this and come up with a fixed price, because we can take out all this bureaucracy and all the administration and all the overhead, and we can plan, and and we can take out weather futures so we can protect ourselves and mitigate against extreme weather, for example. So allow innovation to access the market. One of the big issues that we have, certainly in the UK, and I'm sure globally, is the world is changing at such a rapid pace. Demographically, aging population, health and well-being, mental health, use of digital transformation, automation, etc. All of these issues are changing, give us the ability to change society very, very significantly. And there are very, very significant drivers for change. So if you think about the aging population, well, our existing models of social care clearly are not sustainable. The model we have for the NHS can't be sustainable because of simple demographics. It's not a political thing to say, it's demographics. So if we take outcome-based thinking and apply that to the NHS, how about this? Why don't we think about this? Why don't we change the concept of the NHS, the National Health Service, which is loved and cherished and everyone understands, and turn that away and change that away from being about amazing hospitals to being about amazing communities and people being happy and healthy in amazing communities. Couldn't that, is that such a big leap? What's the outcome we're looking for? The outcome we're looking for is for people to be healthy and happy. Change the thinking. And that is, so outcomes-based thinking is utterly transformational. But here's the problem. It requires horizontal working. It requires connectivity. It requires dot joining and change in a critical, radical way in the context of the NHS, as I've just described. Actually, in the context of highways maintenance, I don't see what the challenge is there. I think the challenge may well be, well, we've always done it this way. Well, that's, for me, is never an answer. I mean, how can it be because I'm a disruptive entrepreneur?
So that I understand in terms of what your idea and the structure is. So how does Bloom then create those connections between suppliers and the requirements for the public sector to have these outcome type activities that they need?
Great question. So supply. First and foremost, we have a unique but obvious kind of proposition and approach, which is that the Bloom marketplace is open access, meaning any supplier at any time can register on the platform and register once and then go through what's called an accreditation process. So, which basically means that they are fit for purpose for the types of services that they are delivering. So they've got the case studies, they've got the references, they've got the relevant insurances, and they've also signed the single form of contract. Now, once they've done that, they can then do business with no administrative costs in terms of legals with any public contracting authority in the UK. That is transformational. Just to give you a sense of 81% of projects through the Bloom marketplace are awarded to SME suppliers. And SME suppliers, in my opinion, are an absolute engine for of dynamism for the economy. Now, let's flip onto the other side and let's look at the requirements of a public sector organisation, which could be a local authority, it could be an NHS trust, it could be a university, it could be a housing association. And so they will then specify, well, look, we have this requirement, we have urgency around, we have a safeguarding issue, and we have, and sadly, there are, we really want to early, intervene to ensure that kids are protected, young children are protected as early as possible, such that we can better manage their kind of outcomes, ensure that they are safe and healthy and all the rest of it. But that needs some kind of change, and we need some particular help. That help could be, and the help that's required, and the skills that are required simply aren't resident within the organisation. So you may have a supplier in mind, you may have no suppliers in mind, but can you articulate the problem? What then happens is we will then work with the client, who is the commissioner, and this is really important. So Bloom is acting effectively as the procurement vehicle for the actual individual person who's got that responsibility. And I'll come back to that, if I may, in terms of why that is important. Now, and then we'll take over and we'll say, well, you don't have to worry about this procurement process because your job is safeguarding. So our job is to allow you to focus on that and as quickly as possible provide you with a solution that can deliver the outcomes you're required.
Yeah.
So we will then turn that thinking into an outcome-based work order, which will either be a direct transaction with one supplier, or it will be a very quick, what we call mini competition. And that is done. So we do that with as little fuss as possible, with a lot of intelligence, because we have transacted over 12,000 projects over the 10 years of our history, which means that organizations can benefit from not having to reinvent the wheel and benefit from the library of intelligence that they can access and tap into.
Yeah.
And we undertake that process, and it is quite remarkable in that it is absolutely transformational with respect to the time of the process, with the efficiency of the process, with the willingness of the participants to engage in that process. Suppliers don't have to engage with procurement, so they don't have to have any knowledge of complex processes. They don't have to worry about getting purchase orders. So we do what I call all that boring stuff for the supplier. We allow a commissioner, the person who's loses sleep at night because they're worried about, safeguarding, to focus on their job and not have to worry about bureaucracy, administration, compliance, and process. We do that for them, fully compliantly and fully transparently. And that is quite remarkable in terms of the transformative impact.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. Got a really good understanding now of the business model and the marketplace in terms of what you do and what you achieve. Let's talk about, so the podcast is about understanding your business journey and what you can share in terms of your learning and experience along the way in terms of doing that. So, why did you get started in the first place? You were talking about you were running another business and you came across this idea. So what was why did you get going 10 years ago with Bloom?
A great question. I mean, I'm a belligerent bootstrapping entrepreneur. I guess I have this ability to look at something and think, well, that's not right. It's just not the right way to do this. It needs to be changed, and well, I'll change it. And oh my goodness, great! This is not an easy journey. The way I describe this is kind of basically one step forwards, half a step backwards. Then you go, well, that's still actually half a step forwards, right? Then it's, 1.5 steps forwards, 1 step backwards, right? And there are setbacks and setbacks and setbacks. And I kind of describe you get punched, you get knocked down. And there've been many a time where I've said to my wife, oh my goodness, really? Oh, and I think there's something innate in me which I dust myself down and I get up again and I kind of move forwards. It's really difficult to explain, but I realize is I'm very good at articulating, getting people to buy into a vision and articulating their problem. I think this was really the genesis of where V4 came from, because really, the way I'll describe the businesses that I've created, they've been created from dust, from a PowerPoint presentation. That when so many people knock on the door of these organisations, they've got so many problems. So few people can articulate with any kind of clarity. Well, this is the problem you've got. I think this is what's required, and here is the journey that we need to undertake.
Yeah,
and I guess I've always had this ability to think horizontally when so many people are in a situation where they think where they think vertically, they sit within their silo. And if you go back 20 years, that was probably okay. Let's look at COVID. What did COVID do? COVID did not respect and does not respect silos.
No.
And boy, have we as the UK paid for that in terms of lack of coordinated approaches, in terms of lack of dot joining, and the world, right? So, so systemically, we all need to work. Horizontal working is more kind of important than ever. So, really my journey is, I think you get to a stage as a one-man band building trying to graft a living as a consultant to building kind of client relationships, and realize, well, hang on a second, I've got something here because people are buying into what I'm saying, and actually I know exactly what the issues are, what's gone wrong before, what they don't need and what they do need. And now, okay, what I now need to do is figure out how to deliver that. And then I also was very good at persuading other people to come on that journey with me. But it is, honestly, I think, and I've reflected, in terms of thinking about this this afternoon, this podcast, which is a wonderful opportunity, isn't it, to reflect. I think enterprise entrepreneurship is absolutely a wonderful thing, and it is something we should absolutely encourage people, young people, not just young people. Sorry, we should encourage people to get involved in, because the skills that you need to develop, the toughness, the resilience, these are, this is armor, and these are tools that everybody needs in life, is what I believe.
So 10 years now, how big, give us an impression, how big is the business now in terms of,
Okay, so, this is quite astonishing. So from a standing start in 2012, at the end of in November last year, we had a 10th year anniversary reception hosted in Parliament by Ian Mearns, who's the MP for Gateshead, which is HQ of kind of Bloom. So we are very much a northeastern anchored kind of company, which is, I think, a fantastic geography, and hopefully we'll get a bit of time to kind of talk about the northeast. And by the way, it happened to be on the same day that the House of Lords was debating the reading of the new procurement bill, which was a remarkable coincidence. And we had this wonderful ecosystem of peers and MPs who attended this event. And I just thought, something, I think we've taken the next step here. I think this is something we've really kind of made. Well, this is an anecdotal and kind of qualitative, but it was, I think, symbolic. And a week previously, I had won the Disruptor of the Year award at the Entrepreneur of the as an Entrepreneur of the Year forgive me in terms of the kind of title for the Northeast. But this happened within a week, so. That was for me, it was the end of last year was really significant. I think in 10 years, significant, really some recognition, I think, which is I think well justified and really important for currency, I think, for the people who work within the company, because everyone can lift their heads, everyone feel proud of the company that we work in, because we're also a new type of public-private partnership where we are enabling public good and making, and custodians of the public purse. But so in terms of the quantitative stuff, in terms of the numbers, as of today, we have some 1,600 plus live projects, individual projects, 1,600, and we have some 230 that are we are working on bringing through into that live kind of project status. The total size of our project book, if you like, is £550 million. We have, and there are some 1,100 suppliers with live engagements, and we have engaged with over 500 contracting authorities. That's public sector organisations. So I think those are quite significant. And
they are indeed, yeah, fantastic. And
I think £1.6 billion actually in total. So every day, and we have I've got live feeds of the projects that are coming in, and I look at them, I'm thinking, my goodness, something. And I say that every time I get an opportunity to speak to the company, what is remarkable about the company is that we have Bloom, we're full of amazing characters who are really passionate about what we do. One of the key drivers everybody mentions is, well, this is an important company because we're actually driving some social good here, but what I remind people about is, look, guys, we are, we are creating life chances for young people. We're enabling level playing fields. We're stimulating regional economies. We're reducing duplication of effort to reduce wastage. we're enabling innovation to get to the market and for the market to access innovation. And that is in such areas as county lines, for example, which is a terrible blight on teenagers who are dragged into kind of criminal gangs, or teenage obesity, or elderly isolation, or dealing with the COVID recovery, creating really better lives and better environments and communities for people up and down across the UK. It is absolutely extraordinary when you see the kind of projects that are coming through, because there may be an association in the public mind of, oh my goodness, the public sector are hiring consultants and what is all that about? Actually, I would say bringing in consultants indiscriminately in a input-driven manner is an absolute abuse. Is the wrong thing to do. It's absolutely the wrong thing to do. However, pretending that you can do everything yourselves and you've got all the skills as an organisation is also terrible. So now, so what is the answer? Where you can actually demonstrate there are outcomes required where you need specialist skills, that is really important to identify early, make sure and be really focused on the outcomes and bring in those skills as efficiently as possible and deliver the outcomes you need as quickly as possible. Because the faster you deliver those outcomes, the faster that there will be affordable housing, there will be healthier communities, that there will be, that we'll deal with, we'll make a difference in terms of mental health conditions, etc. Yeah. It is quite extraordinary the types of, in terms of the breadth, if you like, of the provision of the outcomes that we don't deliver, we enable. And I'm very proud of that.
Brilliant. Oh, it's a fantastic journey and the outcomes and what you're talking about there. I'd just like to bring it back for a moment, back to you. So you use a wonderful phrase in terms of entrepreneurship is a wonderful thing. We should have more of it in terms of doing stuff. But you talked about knockbacks and difficulties. So how do you, through your journey, how have you stopped the overwhelm which lots of people feel in the early days and also many times in their business activity? How do you manage overwhelm and manage?
Well, I've been asked to, and I've developed something of a training course to help other entrepreneurs, because I've made many mistakes, and if you can learn quickly, if you can avoid making mistakes, that is clearly really important. So, why duplicate? Don't, I think there's a really important lesson, which is being an entrepreneur. If you can have some self-awareness of what are your skills, where is your value, how should you best spend your time? It sounds really simple, right? But there is being an entrepreneur doesn't mean you have to do everything. Of course it doesn't. Actually, what it means is figure out what is the outcome you're looking to deliver, right? Yeah. And what is your best contribution to that? Now, that's a really tough thing. That is a really tough thing. The quicker that you can get your head around that as an entrepreneur, the better. Secondly, I've seen, because I've spoken to many entrepreneurs, I've spoken to many innovators, and there's a common narrative, which is, I've got this amazing thing, this amazing invention, which will help prevent falls, which will enable this, enable elderly people to live far healthier in their homes and take their medicines, whatever those things are. And they are so caught up in their own vision, they don't understand, and they have no sense of that they're going to need to persuade and translate that vision into a narrative and a form of communication that the market can engage in. And there's a bigger problem that we have today, which is that the notion of selling, if you like, is so difficult, because for much innovation, there is no natural buyer, because it's lots of these things are cross-cutting. And if we have a look at, I'm thinking about, social care and elderly people who are vulnerable, living at home by themselves, and how technology, for example, can support in many ways. And wouldn't that be an obvious thing for the public sector to engage with? And why isn't it happening? Well, it's not happening because it's outside of it's cutting across those different silos. And the way things are configured are, well, actually what we need to do is buy home care, buy someone to come in 3 times a day to help somebody. And I can't help but thinking, well, actually the outcome we're looking for is to enable someone to live happy and healthily in their own home. Is there another way? Is there another way of doing it? Now, if you're the entrepreneur, you're so convinced, and you have that technology which is going to, or you have the service provision or whatever that thing is, that is going to drive this massive transformation and is going to take over the world. You have to engage in the process of, right, how am I now going to take this to market? What is that process? Because I see it on a daily, weekly basis, because I am involved in, I belong to a club which is for entrepreneurs. It's called Homegrown. I'll give it a little plug, which is absolutely fantastic. I don't know if you know of Homegrown, but it's a absolute hot pot of phenomenal entrepreneurship and innovation. But can we help to accelerate some of this innovation to get to market? And there's some basics there and some fundamentals. So I'm a big believer in avoid people duplicating, avoid people making mistakes that have been made, and understand that there's a massive difference between a vision and a solution that you may have prototyped, that you may think has a fantastic impact, but unless the market understands it and buys it, it is meaningless. And I wonder if there's any research that's been done in terms of the amount of new startups, whether startups or innovative ideas that simply don't get off the ground. Now, some of them shouldn't get off the ground because maybe they're not the right kind of solution, but I'm sure there are many phenomenal innovative solutions that could have transformed people's lives and could have been transformational, could have been great engines for the UK economy, for example, that haven't made it because of that inability to access the market.
Yeah. So back to your business now. So let's talk about yourself. As your business has grown, how have you ensured that the culture has remained strong as it's developed? And how do you keep aligned on the right things to do?
Both really good questions and both really difficult things. Culture is, in a COVID and post-COVID environment, we grew very rapidly, and we had to completely move to a very much an office base for operational driven people to home based, and the executive team and the team within Bloom managed that process wonderfully, absolutely brilliantly. But we were absolutely impacted by quote unquote the Great Resignation, and it's a really difficult thing, in my view, to drive culture where you have a federated environment where you have people who are all over the place. And I was always of the belief that although the surveys were saying that everyone wanted to work from home forever, and I just thought, well, hang on, most surveys were taken at a period of time where that was driven by necessity. So again, what's the outcome we're looking for? The outcome we're looking for is to drive, give people rewarding careers, drive the growth of this business, because the faster we grow, the faster people can grow within the business, give people an ability to gain fantastic experience and accelerate that. But the interactivity and the ability for people to work together is so fundamental to the culture. So I've invested an awful lot and in the cultural evolution and the development of the business, in developing values, in developing our proposition actually to what is our offer to employees within the business. And over the last 18 months, that I think has been, it's been pretty remarkable. It's been very positive, but actually I won't say that I'm happy with it, because I want people to have more human interactivity. So we've got a culture which I think is amazingly positive and amazingly effective in terms of servicing our market, and in terms of an open culture, in terms of a culture of supportiveness, in terms of a culture of very little discernible kind of politics, if you like. But you miss that. Hey, Granger, can we grab a coffee? I've overheard you talking about this thing. I've got some ideas to discuss. I wouldn't mind spending 5 minutes with you. That magic that happens, right? Which you can't, as a young, in my mid-20s, it was so fundamental to my development as a human being, in terms of my kind of career. How do we supplement that? I don't think we haven't got the answer yet. I think that's work in progress. Notwithstanding that, we've got a very positive, evolving kind of culture. And we've also, I think COVID has enabled us to employ people from all parts of the UK. That's also, been very positive. But in terms of culture, in terms of driving the best out of employees, that is an evolutionary process. I think you have to keep challenging yourself. I'm a big believer in what I call a self-service approach. Enable people to see what the possibilities are, and to look. This is what, if you want to grow, demand the opportunities to progress within the company. Don't sit there and wait. Make yourself visible, build your brand within the company, and drive connectivity. I think that certainly in the cohort of the people who are in their first or second jobs, or perhaps it's an age range of, let's say, 20 to 35, we need to provide support for, what does networking really mean? I in our company conference in January, and it was a virtual conference, and it's quite an extraordinary thing. I did the closing address, 2:30 on Friday afternoon. Thank you very much for that slot. Really grateful. Thank you. And you can't read the room, right? I'm 110 people on a Zoom. When you're talking, I'm talking to a screen, and I talked about this stuff, and I talked about the connectivity, because one of our big drivers for this year is innovation and driving further solutions which can drive value. And to innovate, you need people to collaborate, and that means you need people to work across silos. So I said, I think you're brilliant at communicating in your private lives with social media, etc. I want you to bring those skills and your ability to use that sort of stuff into this company and drive things forwards. Honestly, I have no idea how that I think it was received relatively positively. I think the networking and building collaboration and driving innovation, which also drives positive culture, which in terms of your question, requires people to figure out how to build relationships in different ways, certainly in the virtual environment that we're in. So what we are developing regional hubs where people can have more kind of FaceTime together. So we are working creatively and innovatively, but I would want the best of both worlds, right? I want people to be able to work from wherever they can, but I also want people to be seen and to get that dynamism of interactivity.
Yeah. And then the other question was around how you keep the business focused on the right things that need to be done.
Well, I've got a brilliant executive team. I'm like what I would call cabinet member without portfolio. So, anything that sits on my desk, I've got to get off my desk and I've got to get into the business, is how I would kind of describe it. And that is, we have plumbing and machinery, which is pretty extraordinary, that has been built. I don't know how this has been built in at this time, but from an operational perspective, I mean, we punch above our weight, and I think one of my characteristics has always been pushing above my weight. But I've got a team in place, executive team, chief executive and chief operating officer and CFO and chief growth officer and CTO, who are working in such an intelligent manner to drive the growth of the business, but also to ensure that every employee in the business knows what are their responsibilities, what are they doing to support the objectives of the business and the business plan, and so that no one can be in any kind of doubt of that, with the encouragement and the measurement and the support to kind of drive that process. Now, of course, that is not an exact science, but I think we've built, I think scaling a business like ours is, you need serious infrastructure. You need to think in a very grown-up way about scale, and I call it plumbing. The plumbing, right? It's there. Once the plumbing's in, it gives you the ability to flow water through those pipes and scale. And we are now over 100 people, and I think we've got that about right. Now, as an entrepreneur, I'm never going to be satisfied because I'm 3 years ahead already. So, well, how can we accelerate? That is what concerns me is speed of execution. The questions I would ask of my executive team and that I would ask at the board is, well, okay, demonstrate that you're working at the right kind of pace, demonstrate that you're saturating the capacity of the business. If you look at employees on a scale of 1 to 10, where 10 you can't get any more out of them and 1 is completely different the scale, where are we? Right, if someone is a 6, great, how can we get them to a 7? Someone's a 7, how can we get them to an 8? I think it's that I'm a big believer in the atomic habits, which is that very incremental improvement on a kind of daily basis. It's that 0.1%. If everyone is doing that at 0.1%, challenge yourself on a daily basis. What can you do to make things better for this business? I say this to every single employee in the business. I do a meet the founder when they've been in the business after 6 weeks and say, there's no glass ceiling in this business. I don't want you to sit in a silo. I want you to think about what you could do to improve this business, because you're here, because you are of massive value, and we need you and your value. Right, and the faster you develop, the faster we're going to grow as a business, and that you can grow as an individual. And that is certainly our kind of philosophy and approach as a business. But of course, it's always imperfect, because as you grow, there are always new pressures, and oh crikey, that's there's a hole in the dam, if you like. We need to plug it. What do we now do to scale to the next level? So you're always constantly on a treadmill.
Yeah, very much so. Wow, fantastic conversation. So one final question, which I know this is going to be an amazing answer from you. So what really drives you crazy in the industry? And if you had a magic wand, what would you change?
I think the small businesses don't have a voice. I think so if we think about employment legislation, that bootstrapping the business and having to cope and manage with the processes and the compliance and requirements, legal requirements of, let's say, employment. Let's just take that as one small example. The same legislation that Tesco's need to manage, if you like, is, I think, brutally unfair, and it's not right. It's not appropriate for businesses that are starting up. The notion of there's very good reasons where, if you want to take a year off to care for a relative, and any business of any size has to keep that role open. Well, it's very different for Tesco's or a Sainsbury's or a John Lewis to do that. But come on, for a small organisation, the stress that's involved in that kind of process. But that's just one small example. Why would you apply blanketly legislation which is going to inhibit growth? Makes no sense to me. But broadly, small business doesn't have a voice. Yes, there is the Federation of Small Business. There are enterprise groups. I think small businesses don't want. Some small businesses. I've built this business. I want it to be a small. This is what I'm about. It's a small family business. But there are many small businesses that I don't want to be small. Right? I want to grow. Right. So how can the government enable growth? Right. And it's not about money, but it's actually about liberation. It's about providing a framework. It's about providing some kind of stimulus and kind of incentives which are supportive, that will enable success. So if the small example that Bloom does, if we think about the new procurement bill, which is going to be on the statute books, is actually going to make life more complicated for all suppliers, because Scotland is doing its own thing, and the NHS has got carve-outs and can potentially do something else. And then now we're dealing with one set of complicated rules with the EU procurement legislation. We're going to be moving to, my goodness, well, I've got business in Scotland. I'm doing something with the NHS. I'm doing something in England. Well, that isn't going to help small businesses from engaging with the public sector efficiently and effectively. That is going to be very costly, and it's going to inhibit growth. And that's going to result in fewer companies accessing or being able to deliver solutions to products and services to the public sector. Okay, fantastic. I've got a solution for that, and that's called Bloom. You don't have to worry about that. But that is a small example of an unintended consequence. Think about, and maybe there have been initiatives on payments and liquidity for suppliers. But let me tell you something. As a small supplier, if you're doing business and you may have the ability to charge a fixed penalty to a large organization if they don't pay you within 30 days. You also have the legal mandate, if you like, to charge interest on that as well. But let me tell you, there are not many organizations that will do that, because if you want to ever do business with that organization again, no chance. The unintended consequence of that, if you're BT or if you're a large organization, I'm not singling out BT, if you're a large organization, my goodness, we will pay you on time, right? It's perverse. So the environment, so can you imagine if we have a supportive environment that deals with some of these issues? There is, and I see it through the Entrepreneurs Club that I'm a member of, I see it on a daily basis. Wow, there is unbelievable innovation out there. We need to be supportive of enabling innovation to get to market, to drive fantastic outcomes. But I think we're sitting on some global, emerging kind of brands and solutions, which may never get off the ground, may never get off the starting board because of the environment and the framework.
Yeah. Adam, wow, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for the conversation today, in terms of taking us through the passion that you have to drive innovation in the procurement industry with public services is just phenomenal. And the growth of your business to celebrating 10 years and in the Houses of Parliament in terms of your awards, etc., that have come through as well. And you're giving back in terms of your entrepreneurial knowledge and skill to new entrepreneurs and helping them grow and develop within your own field of excitement and passion that you have for this. So thank you. That's come across absolutely paramount to all of this conversation. It's been amazing. So always finish with a quick fire round. Okay. So final few questions. So if you'd go back to younger you, what would your advice be to yourself?
Have some develop self-awareness very quickly, understand what emotional intelligence is, and understand what you're really good at, where you should focus your time, and therefore how you can augment what your skills are with kind of other skills. Don't reinvent the wheel. Brilliant.
Which books do you recommend?
So I read by listening. I crossed this chasm about 4 years ago where I can't listen to an Audible because it's cheating. I've crossed that chasm. It is extraordinary. I love Audible, and I now read 2 or 3 books a week by listening, which is extraordinary. And I'm just looking through my kind of Audible library now. I'm pretty eclectic. I'm a massive fan of John Ronson. He basically investigative journalism. So the psychopath test is really interesting. Is absolutely fantastic. I'm a big fan of Frederick Forsyth, the Afghan and the Kill List. I'm a big fan of kind of Chris Ryan. In the last 12 months, John Sopel's Unprecedented. John Sopel, I'm a big fan of his new Sopel and Matelist podcast, which is absolutely fantastic. And Sopel's books are great. They're well worth listening to because he narrates them. Luke Harding, Shadow State, where he talks about kind of the rise of kind of Putin and Russia. And Mark Dawson, who is a self-published author. Fantastic.
Brilliant. You talked about podcasts, so which ones do you recommend?
So The Rest is Politics, Alistair Campbell and Rory Stewart, and the new, forgive me, what's it called? The Matelist and the News Agents, which is, I think, absolutely brilliant. Interestingly, the News Agents with, so Emily, the 3 of them left the BBC, I think is becoming is changing the way, it's changing media in the UK, these podcasts. They're becoming really important because people are now coming to them and saying, listen, I think you should interview us, right? So they are beginning to, really get under these podcasts are getting under the covers where 24 hours news TV is becoming very vanilla. So if you want any kind of in-depth analysis and discussion where outside of the BBC, like Emily Matelist and Sopel or Alistair Campbell or Rory Stewart can express themselves, I think it's absolutely fascinating. And you can see, if you look through the podcast charts, that people are really engaging with these podcasts.
Thank you. So my favourite question of all, who's had the most influence on you as a business leader?
Jeff Bezos. He built Amazon from his garage. Whatever you think about Jeff Bezos, I mean, what's an extraordinary, extraordinary. Whatever you think about them now, but crikey, just go back to the start of Amazon and people were talking about it, and it literally was from a garage, right? $15. It's astonishing. And the amazing thing is, because Amazon is, every time people are used to, it started with books, but now Amazon is everything, because the customer experience is so important. So every time an Amazon rolls something out and a new kind of product or service in the same way, so people are used to it. And so I'm saying Amazon and Jeff Bezos, not because of the position they occupy in the market today. I'm saying that in terms of what's an amazing case study for business building and scaling a business.
Brilliant. And finally, how can people get hold of you?
Adam.Jacobs at Bloom.Services. So that's me.
Awesome. Adam Jacobs, thank you very much for this conversation today. It's been fantastic and inspiring.
That's very kind of you to say. Thank you so much.
I hope you enjoyed that discussion, and if you're building and scaling your own business, you might well be interested in our book, The Entrepreneurial ScaleUp System. And it's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a practical handbook around scaling a business in a structured way. And you can order a copy on all your favorite online retailers, including an audio version, or you can find it and other supporting resources on our website, www.esusgroup.co.uk. That's esusgroup.co.uk, which is esusgroup.co.uk.
This has been a Monkey Pants Productions podcast.